3. Capita Imperator, Planet Caliban. Arron walked slowly, his hand twitching over the hilt of his sword. The street was dark and gloomy, the ancient buildings of the lower city seeming almost to loom over the alleys and passageways like the shadows of dark things, waiting to pounce. He brought a hand to his helmet comlink, activating it. "This is Lightfoot," he said quietly. "I am at the rendezvous point, awaiting your arrival." "This is Alexis," came the hard voice of one of his colleagues. "Verin and I will be there shortly with our backup." She spoke the word with a slight quiver of disgust in her voice. "Understood," Arron told her, not questioning her tone. It wasn't really his place. He tensed, before closing his eyes and letting out a single breath to relax. He did not like the underbelly of the Imperial City. These were old buildings, built to last but with little sense of aesthetics. They were ugly, looming, blocky things, and they always made him feel as though he was being watched. Nonetheless, duty called for him to be here, a duty perhaps more important than any he had undertaken in all his time in the Order. The raiders had been tracked to this part of the city, a warehouse derelict and abandoned. Arron and a small group of knights had been tasked with taking back the Oracle and dealing with those who had taken her by whatever means necessary. "Make them bleed," Lysan had said, as he gave Arron the command. Arron had been surprised. Other knights were more experienced than him. Lysan, however, had not explained himself further, merely giving him his orders and sending him on his way. "Make them bleed," Arron repeated in his head. He found himself feeling nervous. Genevieve Cross had been one of the most skilled duelists in the Order. If she had fallen to these enemies, whoever they were... "Have faith, Arron," he chastised himself. "The Grand Master wouldn't have picked you if you weren't able to do this, if he didn't have faith." "Soleil," he whispered reflexively, "I walk now into the darkness. Grant me your light to guide my steps, so that I might walk in certainty." "You know, I don't think she's listening," a cocky voice said from behind him. Arron spun around in a flash, sword drawn and activated, a crackling blue electrical field running up and down the blade, illuminating the speaker. He was a white-haired albino man, clad in chipped and worn battle armor, an ugly skull-face helmet clipped to the side of his belt. He held a large gun with a bulky magazine lazily in one hand, the stock leaning on his shoulder. Arron noted how the man kept his finger just above the trigger guard. Clearly, here was a man familiar with his trade. "Who are you?" Arron demanded. "Don't worry," came another voice from behind the man. "He's part of the team." Another figure, this one female clad in the sturdy gold-tinted armor of a Knight of Sol, came from behind the man. This was his comrade, Sir Zyla Verin. Her face was covered in soft, red-tinged fur, her form was lithe and limber, and she wore a stoic, almost grim expression on her beautiful felinoid face. Arron had picked the Vide Knight to be one of his team for this mission because she was, by all accounts, a rising star in the Order. Skilled, reliable. Most people considered her too closed off, but that was hardly the worst crime in the world. He hoped she would justify his trust. "Alexis is behind us," she said, her Vidalian accent stronger than Lysan's, "and we found a pair of individuals who were willing to assist us in the raid. This man's one of them." Arron nodded. "Did you find out who was responsible for the attack on the Basilica?" "Not as such," Verin admitted. "The folks you're looking for came down to the local dive a few days ago," the albino man said roughly. "Gaxers were talking about a difficult job that paid well. One of the local gangs took 'em up on the offer." Arron raised an eyebrow. "But you didn't, Mr. Crow, Heinrich Crow," the albino said. "No, I didn't. I don't tend to take jobs that involve people killing. I'm a civilizer. Job has to be exceptional to get me shooting at anything that ain't big game on an ugly rock in deep space." Arron took that in for a second. Civilizers was a polite term for a particular brand of mercenary. They were, as a rule, highly unsavoury types who tended, by virtue of their hazardous trade, to be almost exclusively armed with the deadliest and most reliable weapons to hand. They were normally found as part of expeditions to wild, barely habitable planets. It was their job to, bluntly speaking, butcher massive amounts of wildlife and put the fear of Soleil into the remaining population. When the attacks stopped, or at least slowed down, the planet would be declared civilized, and the civilizers and their expeditions would move on to another planet and repeat the entire process. It was the kind of job that never attracted the overly moral, the overly cheery, or the overly sane, and this man struck Arron as likely missing something of all three to a degree. Somehow his presence was not entirely comforting. "And this job is exceptional enough for you, Mr. Crow?" he snorted. "Oh, frat, yeah," Crow said with a grin. "2 nights of Sol, walking to a bar, asking for info, another one waiting here. Even seeing you guys down here is a promise of a good fight. Joining you? Well, that's just common sense." Arron raised an eyebrow again and shared a glance with Verin, who didn't react. Arron sighed. Zyla Verin was one of the most closed-off people Arron had ever known. "Where's Alexis?" he asked. "Bringing another stray," Verin answered shortly. "Not that you call them a stray," Crow commented. "I don't recall asking your opinion, mercenary," Arron snapped. "How do we know you weren't part of the attack on the monastery?" "You don't," Crow replied blithely. "But I'm here now, and I didn't need to be. Try to remember that, your grace, before you start throwing around your fancy talk." Arron narrowed his eyes, but said nothing else. "Truthfully, I think having extra guns on this mission will be a benefit," Verin commented dryly. "We don't know what we'll be up against, after all." She didn't need to remind Arron that one of these enemies had killed Genevieve Cross. Arron nodded once, his frown deepening. "Once Alexis is here, we'll prepare a plan of attack," he said quietly.